Thanks, Rob. This has been such a delightful time for me because I'm sort of in love with all of the ingredients that we have in our product, and I love the fact that you always include the process. You know, there's a very unique process for extracting the valuable phytochemicals from these 10 ingredients. And we can talk about each individual ingredient, which is what we are doing on this call, but it's really important to point out that in the plant kingdom, many herbs and fungi, mushrooms have numerous components, and the real magic happens when we can synergistically blend them together and then do this mutual extraction process where you end up with something so totally unique that it's really without that process and without Mark Premer's extreme intelligence and experience in working with these compounds, nobody else would ever end up with what we have. And that just makes it even more exciting. And I personally am really delighted that manufacturing is done. Yes, I'm so ready to start putting this in my body. I can't wait. Tonight, I thought I'd talk about chaga. And, chaga is basically a mushroom that feeds off the white part of the birch tree bark. And here it's actually able to absorb and utilize anti-mutagenic action molecules that actually inhibit free radical oxidation. Wow, that's a mouthful. So basically, the chaga lives on birch trees primarily, and usually birch trees that are a little more senior, 40 years or older, and it grows. And I kind of look at chaga as being like pugs. The pug dogs. They're so ugly, they're absolutely adorable, except when they're puppies, then they're cuter than anything you ever saw. But this mushroom is not the prettiest dude you'll ever look at, and yet. It's very hard and crusty on the outside, a little bit horny. It's very dark on the edges. It doesn't look like our normal thought form of a mushroom whatsoever, but mushroom it is. And the material, it is the highest antioxidant or highest ORAC rating of any superfood comes to the table with chaga. And, its ability to produce these these free radical blocking compounds, and including interferons, by the way, and can actually enhance DNA repair. I mean, it's considered, one of the most medically valuable of all mushrooms out there. And it's been, it's been used in Siberia, Russia, and China since the 16th century. So this is not a guy that somebody just decided to write a bunch of papers about. We're talking about, hundreds of years of experience in working with this compound. It's in China, it's called the king of all plants. In Siberia, it's called the gift from God. In Japan, they call it diamond of the forest. And in Norway, they call it, I think it's pronounced Kerf, Kreff, Juke, Juke, which translates to cancer polypore, or something that fights cancer. Chaga extracts nutrients from the birch tree, and it becomes so phytochemical dense that it's hard to compare it to any of the other mushrooms. And we've all heard about all of these mushrooms and all of these superfoods, and yet in my book, chaga is really at the top of the walk. One of the things that it's very high in is something called melanin, and melanin is an antioxidant pigment. We all have melanin. We make melanin. That's what gives us our skin color, and that skin color does protect you from damaging rays from too much sun exposure. This particular melanin has got a lot of value in its antioxidant protection. Now, one of the things that I really got excited about years ago when I first started studying chaga is that it's a wonderful source of SOD. And SOD stands for superoxide dismutase. Now, this is one of the best antioxidant free radical scavengers that you have in your body. It's actually manufactured within the cell itself. But unfortunately, as time goes by and cells get dirtier and cells don't perform as well, when they're 60 or 70 or even 50 as they did when you were 15 or 20 or 30, the production of SOD diminishes. And there's a lot of study in this area about being able to keep our SOD levels high enough to protect us within each and every cell of our body. And guess what? There aren't very many sources out there where you can get superoxide dismutase, and there's a whole family of them. They are enzymes that basically, think of Pac-Man, go in and gobble up free radicals and therefore protect us. The Moscow Medical Academy of Science has identified this particular mushroom as a powerful adaptogen. It can mitigate and protect against the effects of stress. It has anti-inflammatory properties. And one of the things that it contains is something called beta-D-glucans. Everybody's kind of learned about beta-glucans the last few years because they've sort of flew into the world of natural health care about 30 years ago. They were discovered before that, but they really kind of became known out in the public about 30 years ago. And there's more than one kind. But this particular one, beta-D-glucan, is unique. We worry about, for example, people who have overactive immune systems. Their bodies their immune systems are so amped that they have to be really careful, even with vitamin C, anything that is an immune system stimulant. But there are, from Mother Nature's kitchen, God's pharmacy, I calls it, a few compounds that actually act as immune modulators. Most of those have beta-D-glucan. And basically what that means to you and me is if the immune system is too slow, it picks it up. And if it's too fast, it slows it down. So when the system is under stress and needs a stronger immune system response, boom, it'll kick into gear and help with that. Now, in some people, what happens is the immune system notches up, and it's almost like it forgets to turn back off. That switch doesn't reverse when the threat is over. And this is when the immune system can become your enemy instead of your friend. And, in medicine, they deal with this all the time, and they use things like steroids to suppress the immune system to try and get things re-regulated from an over-response. But modulators have far fewer side effects and actually work with the natural chemistry of the body. The effects of an immune modulator just can't even be stressed enough. There aren't a lot of them out there that we've discovered yet, but this one happens to be one of them. This product also contains something called beta-lunic acid, which helps break down bad cholesterol. There's another thing that's very hard to find. Anybody that's fought the high blood fat issue or the imbalance in blood fats knows how bloomin' hard it is. You can change your diet, you can exercise more, you can work your hiney off, and you go back and see your doc in 90 days or 6 months, and maybe your cholesterol's dropped, 10 points. And the doctor's going to be happy with that because he knows how hard it is. But when we have compounds that contain these butylenic acids, that can actually augment what's going on when we change our lifestyle. When we start eating better, we get less of the trans fats, the bad fats, more of the good fats. Good fats get rid of bad fats. Good fats get rid of bad fats. When you combine that with compounds like chaga, you really can enhance the results you're looking for. Now, another thing that this mushroom does, it's amazing because it can protect DNA. And, the more we learn about genetics, the more we learn about the inner workings within every little teeny cell in our body, which is its own community. I mean, I think we talked about that once before. Every cell of your body has its own electrical system, its own circulatory system, its own government. It manages the production of whatever that cell is responsible for. It manages to cleanse itself, repair itself, maintain itself. And it's so sophisticated that the signaling protein within that cell can literally identify incoming nutrients, send it to the right receptor site, and then tell that receptor site what it's supposed to do with it. This is, our bodies are really pretty amazing. It's really wonderful that so much research is going on in this area so that we begin to have a greater appreciation. Now, we know within the cell, whenever DNA is damaged, it's always been concerning that we couldn't repair it. Well, now we know differently because of the research that's going on in that area. We've learned that there are things that can actually help. In one study that I read, they took chaga extract and treated cells before exposing them to an oxidative stressor. And then they treated some cells, the other cells were not. So you had basically a double blind study here on these cells. And what they did is they treated with the chaga extract, and then they exposed the cells to hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, which is it can induce oxidative stress. Anybody who's ever put peroxide on a cut, you see it go bubble, bubble, bubble. Well, that's the oxidation that's happening, and that's really good to do when you have a new scrape or a new cut or a new injury, especially any injury where there may be dirt or lots of germs or contamination. But you don't keep doing that, because if you do, you actually end up damaging your cells. You can actually retard the healing of the cells because of the oxidative stress. What you do, by the way, is just switch to good old-fashioned iodine, and after cleaning it with peroxide, use iodine, which has got all these wonderful characteristics and will not do oxidative stress on your healing cells. So when it was all said and done, the chaga pre-treated cells displayed far less damage than the ones that were untreated with the chaga. Now, one of the things that maybe many of you have learned about and probably have even studied is this compound called polysaccharides. They're in all kinds of plants. The particular polysaccharides that we find in chaga have been shown to be very supportive of good cardiovascular health, intestinal health, liver support, and can even help balance and keep blood sugar where it should be. Now, chaga also contains phytosterols. You guys know a lot about phytosterols because phytosterols are one of the compounds that are used a lot to help keep good prostate health, and there's all different kinds of them. In chaga, the ones that there's a whole army of them. One of which is about 45%. Has been studied in vivo and in vitro. So in case you guys don't know what that is, it's basically whether you test it on living cells where life is present or whether you test it in a petri dish on something that's not alive. And that information, those two types of testing, gives us some really pretty good information. And what they found with these particular phytosterols was that it had a very positive effect on any kind of viral compounds. So it makes it a great thing to be taking in the wintertime when we want our immune system be turned in and looking for these kinds of invaders. The black pigment called melatonin has also had quite a bit of studies for its very high antioxidant levels. So, we've got the SOD, we've got the polysaccharides, we've got the phytonutrients, and now we talk a little bit more about the melanin. This particular melanin is the guy that has the highest ORAC score of any superfood ever tested. That's kind of amazing. We've all kind of been down the road. We know about quinoa, which is very high in all kinds of nutrition, vitamins, minerals, and very high, in fact, in flavonoids, which are really good for you. And it's also got antioxidant capability, but chaga is much higher. Goji berries have very high amounts of polysaccharides. Now, the main one in goji is pectin, and anybody who's done any research on pectin knows that it has a very positive effect on your immune system. It can help protect you from certain types of heavy metals. It can actually help chelate out heavy metals. But the one in chaga called chitin, CHITIN, is an even better polysaccharide, has a bigger effect on the immune system. And oh, by the way, you can get pectin in apples. You can get it in grapefruit, oranges, peaches. But you know what? Go out and try and find foods that are high in chitin, and there aren't too many. So chaga actually fills another spot in this phytochemical compounds that serve our bodies in a very balanced fashion, helping our cells from many different directions. You know, you kind of have to think about the cells of the body a little bit like you're a scuba diver. When you're underwater, which I used to love to do, it's a different environment because, you know, when you're here on the ground, you kind of have up, left, right, and then your feet are on the ground, so nothing's ever coming at you from the bottom. When you're in the water, you can have things coming from you at every direction. Well, you know what? Our cells are very much like that. Things can come from multiple directions at one time through different chemical streams and different sources. So when we can have the kind of performance that we get from these adaptogenic compounds that also give us antioxidants and DNA protection and help our bodies deal with balancing blood sugar and blood fats, you know, overall, we're helping to maintain the systems of the body that take care of us. If we stop and think about it for a minute, we have the cardiovascular system, circulatory system. We have the digestive system, which is kind of king because that's the guy who feeds everybody. You know, it doesn't give you much help to have a super army in your body if you can't give it bullets for its gun, gas for its jeep, boots for its feet, and a sandwich for his tummy. So we've got that digestive system, we've got the endocrine system, and we've got the lymphatic system. These are the systems that kind of take care of all of the residents called cells inside of the human body. And because of the way that all works together, when we can pull in these adaptogenic compounds that also serve us with high antioxidants and other phytochemicals, we end up with all of these wonderful pluses. There's a guy in the Pacific Northwest. His name is Paul Stamets, and Paul is one of the world authorities on mushrooms, and he's such a cool dude. You know, he actually discovered many mushrooms that were growing in the Olympic National Forest in Washington State. And being such a good scientist and a good uh, land steward, the man literally went into the forest and took these little sheets and he collected the cells from each of these mushrooms so that he didn't pick one single mushroom. He just collected the spores, collected soil samples, took them back to his facility, and began growing these incredible mushrooms and researching them and publishing about them and speaking about them. And he was one of the primary forces in the world to sort of bring mushrooms to our attention. If we look at mushrooms as a broad spectrum category of food, one of the things that's amazing about mushrooms is they are nitrogen donors. Now, any of you who ever tried any of the high nitrogen products that are out there, and there are certain amino acids that are also high nitrogen, one of the things they do is they help promote good circulation in the body. They also provide some proteins in short and long chains called peptides that you don't get out of animal proteins. So Paul has been the guy who's really been in the States, kind of our Mark Priemer. You know, Mark Priemer is an amazing guy, you guys, this wonderful man that we have here with New Yugen. But Paul Stamets says of this particular mushroom that it augments the body's immune system, it supports stress and fatigue, it provides support for daily environmental assaults. Daily environmental assaults, trains and planes and boats and cars and nuclear power plants that melt down and insecticides and herbicides and crazy insane weather that brings, you know, allergens and things into our area that we're not accustomed to, and the list goes on. It's a very important part of what each and every one of us need to be doing for ourselves and our families on a daily basis. You know, we all know the story. The air isn't as clean, the water isn't as pure, the topsoil isn't as good. And when we can have compounds like this to help fortify our body against the obvious insults that can happen from the environment we live in, it certainly is well worth any amount of money. You know, my son recently had an emergency situation and we had to have him taken away in an ambulance. You know, we can buy a lot of this compound, Solera, for what it costs for that ambulance ride. 5,800 smackers just for the ambulance. Just for the ambulance. Not for the medics inside or anything else. So remember that when we could provide daily support for our bodies dealing with environmental assaults, I'm telling you, it's a small price to pay for what it can give you on the inside. It delivers enzymes that both support digestion, also aid in the absorption of nutrients, and also SOD enzymes, which are very involved in free radical protection. It provides polysaccharides to increase the activity and impact of our natural killer cells and macrophage. So that's back to that army we were talking about just a short bit ago. That army is very complex. You've got this whole team of white blood cells, and they have an organization. Each one of them has a job, and they know how to do it. But we have to be in a space to know that on a daily level, because of the stresses of our life, because of the stresses of our environment, you know, those systems in the body and our body's ability to produce those warriors to take care of us can become crippled. It can become very reduced. So, you know, I, for one, am delighted that we're going to have this before the real serious cold and flu season comes around, because I think that what we're going to find with Solera is going to be nothing short of amazing. And I'm loving just researching and finding out more and more about the compounds that are in Solera every single day, because there's more and more research being done in this area. Certainly in Russia, they have been far ahead of us in the world of research of phytochemicals and herbals, but we're catching up, and we're catching up in a big way, and it's very exciting to see newer information coming out on a daily basis, and I love looking forward to sharing that with all of you. And Rob, I think I did a little better. I think I made it under the wire tonight.